Rachel had always believed in second chances, but she never thought she'd need one so desperately. After years of living in fear, hiding bruises behind long sleeves and fake smiles, she finally made the hardest decision of her life, leaving. With nothing but a duffel bag, her 7-year-old son Eli, and a half-tank of gas, she drove away from the small town she once called home. Her ex-husband's anger had gone too far, and this time, she couldn't risk it anymore. She'd spent too long hoping he would change. Being a single mother was already hard, but doing it while constantly looking over her shoulder felt unbearable. As a woman who'd faced discrimination not just for being poor but for speaking out, Rachel knew the odds were stacked against her. But as snow started to fall and the road stretched endlessly ahead, she made herself a promise: Eli would grow up in peace. She would protect him no matter what. She didn't want him to inherit her fears. She wanted to inspire him with her strength. The road was rough, the future uncertain, but in that moment, she clung to hope. Somewhere out there, she believed, was a place where kindness still existed, and maybe even a fresh start. The storm hit harder than Rachel expected. Thick snow blanketed the highway, turning the road into a blur of white, and the windshield wipers couldn't keep up. Her fingers tightened around the steering wheel as Eli dozed in the back seat, curled beneath a worn blanket. She had planned to reach the next town before nightfall, but the blizzard had other ideas. Just when she was about to pull over and wait it out, a dim light flickered in the distance. An old wooden sign barely visible through the snow read, "Jack's Ranch, Private Drive." With nowhere else to go, she turned in. The narrow path crunched under her tires as they crept toward the only hope in miles. The ranch house stood sturdy against the wind, smoke rising from its chimney. When the front door opened and a tall, rugged man stepped onto the porch, Rachel hesitated. Jack wasn't expecting guests, especially not a woman and child in the middle of a snowstorm. Still, something in her eyes stopped him. Cold fear, yes, but also determination. He let them in. The fire crackled, the warmth almost painful against her frozen skin. Rachel didn't explain much, and Jack didn't ask. But in that quiet room, something began to thaw, not just the cold, but the walls they had both built. In a world where discrimination had often left her invisible, Jack's silent acceptance felt like the beginning of healing. She didn't know what came next, but this moment might just inspire a new chapter neither of them saw coming. Jack's eyes held a quiet sorrow, one that Rachel couldn't ignore. The firelight flickered against the rough lines etched deep into his face, each one telling a story of loss and solitude. Years ago, he had been a man full of dreams, a devoted husband and father. But the sudden deaths of his wife and child had shattered that world, leaving him with nothing but memories and an empty house on a vast, lonely ranch. Since then, Jack had closed himself off, convinced that love was a risk he could no longer afford. His heart was a fortress, built from pain and silence, and trust was a language he had long forgotten. When Rachel arrived, desperate and weary, he was cautious, unable to offer the warmth she needed, yet unwilling to turn her away. In a world where discrimination often came in harsh whispers and cold stares, Jack's retreat was a shield, protecting him from further wounds. Still, beneath his guarded exterior, something stirred. Watching Rachel's strength to protect her son against all odds began to inspire him. Maybe, just maybe, healing was possible not through forgetting the past, but by opening the door to a new kind of family, one built not by blood, but by kindness and courage. Jack's walls began to crumble not all at once, but in the quiet moments between chores and conversations, Rachel's warmth was different from anything he'd known in years. She didn't demand or expect. She simply offered honesty and kindness. Her smile, though tired, held a steady light that eased the shadows in his home. Little Eli, with his boundless curiosity and laughter, brought something Jack hadn't felt in a long time of fragile hope. Watching Eli chase after a stray dog or marvel at the snowflakes made Jack's heart ache and mend all at once. The ranch, once a place of silence and loss, slowly filled with the noise of life again. Rachel's presence was like a balm, soothing the bitterness left by years of isolation. She spoke openly about the discrimination she had faced not only for her past, but as a woman trying to rebuild her life. Yet, her courage to keep moving forward did more than just survive. It began to inspire Jack to believe in connection again. Their days were marked by small acts, Rachel fixing the old fence, Jack teaching Eli how to feed the horses, shared meals by the fire that wove a new kind of family, stitched together with patience, respect, and hope. In these simple, honest exchanges, the seed of trust grew. For Jack, Rachel and Eli were no longer strangers. They were the beginnings of a second chance at belonging. Every day brought new routines, small tasks that slowly built bridges between Rachel, Jack, and Eli. Mornings started with the scent of fresh coffee and the sound of Eli's eager questions about the animals outside. Together, they prepared meals simple but hearty, sharing stories over breakfast that planted seeds of trust. Jack showed Eli how to feed the horses and mend fences, patient in his teaching, while Rachel worked beside him, fixing what time and weather had worn down. These chores, though ordinary, became their way of communicating when words were hard to find. Rachel often reflected on the many forms of discrimination she had faced in her life moments, when others doubted her strength or intentions because of her past. But here, in this quiet corner of the world, the judgment seemed to melt away, replaced by acceptance and teamwork. The small victories like Eli's first successful fence repair or the smile Jack allowed himself after a shared joke were reminders that healing isn't instant but grows in moments of connection. Rachel's resilience and willingness to trust again began to inspire Jack more than she could know, nudging him to lower the walls he'd held up for so long. Through these daily activities, the trio wasn't just surviving. They were forming a family, woven together by effort, patience, and a shared hope for what the future might hold. One crisp morning, just as the snow began to thaw, Rachel's fragile sense of peace shattered. Brian, her abusive ex-husband, showed up at the ranch's weathered gate with cold determination in his eyes. His return was a storm of its own legal papers demanding custody of Eli, harsh words, and old threats resurrected from the past. The fear Rachel had fought so hard to leave behind threatened to consume her once again. Despite her courage and the support she found in Jack and Eli, Brian's presence reminded her how discrimination in the legal system often works against women like Herthos, trying to escape violent pasts but still judged and doubted. Jack stood firm beside her, his protective silence louder than any argument, while Eli clung to his mother, sensing the tension in the air. The battle wasn't just about custody, it was about reclaiming safety and dignity. But in the face of this darkness, Rachel's strength shone brightest. Her resolve to fight not only for herself, but to inspire Eli to believe in justice and love gave her renewed purpose. Together, with Jack's unwavering support, they prepared to face whatever came next, knowing that their bond was stronger than any threat from the past. Jack understood that this fight wasn't just about Rachel and Eli. It was about standing up against a system and society that too often turned its back on those who needed protection the most. When Brian's threats escalated, Jack didn't hesitate for a moment. He became more than just a guardian. He was a fierce defender of Rachel and Eli's right to live without fear. The news of Brian's return traveled fast through the small rural community, a place where everyone knew each other's stories, and respect was earned through actions over time. Jack had spent years earning that respect, and now the community was ready to stand with him and with Rachel and Eli. Neighbors arrived with casseroles and warm blankets. Local farmers offered to help with chores, and even the town's small legal aid group stepped forward to assist Rachel with her case. The community's support was powerful because it came from a place of genuine care, not obligation. They knew what it meant to be vulnerable, and they refused to let discrimination isolate Rachel any longer. For years, she had faced judgment and doubt, often misunderstood or ignored by those who couldn't see beyond her past. But here, among these people, Rachel was met with empathy and solidarity. Jack's unwavering loyalty and courage inspired others to look past Rachel's history and recognize the incredible strength she carried within. His steadfast presence sent a message to Brian and the world that love and justice could triumph over fear and intimidation. The bond they shared, forged in hardship, became a beacon of hope for others in the community who had faced their own battles. Together, they formed a protective circle around Rachel and Eli, showing that family is defined not by blood, but by those who stand up when it matters most. Even in the face of uncertainty and danger, this small community proved that kindness and unity could weather the harshest storms. Rachel, Jack, and Eli no longer felt alone. They were part of something bigger, a chosen family built on trust, respect, and unshakable support. And that gave them all the strength they needed to face whatever came next. As spring arrived and the last of the snow melted into the soil, the ranch began to bloom again, just like the people living on it. The long nights of fear and the weight of uncertainty started to fade, replaced by quiet mornings filled with laughter, shared work, and the peaceful hum of a family learning to breathe again. Jack stood on the porch one evening, watching Rachel and Eli chase fireflies under a soft, pink sky. Something stirred deep in his chest, something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. It wasn't just comfort, it was love. Real, steady, and earned through every hard moment they'd survived together. For Jack, this journey had uncovered a part of himself he thought was buried with his wife and child: purpose. Rachel and Eli had shown him that healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant choosing to open up again, to let someone in, even when it scared him. Through every fence they fixed and every meal they shared, he had built something real with them, something that went far beyond obligation or protection. It was family, not by blood, but by heart. Rachel, too, had changed. She no longer carried fear like a shadow. In its place was something stronger: peace. For so long, she had braced herself for the next blow, the next judgment, the next reminder that the world often met women like her with discrimination instead of understanding. But here, in Jack's home, and in this tight-knit community, she had found safety. And beyond that, she had found love steady, respectful, and patient. A kind of love she never thought she'd deserve again. That night, as they sat by the firejack on one side of the hearth, Rachel on the other, and Eli fast asleep on the couch between them, Jack finally spoke the words that had been building in his chest. "I thought my heart was done," he said, voice low and rough like gravel. "But you brought it back to life, both of you." His eyes met hers, steady and sure. "I don't want to lose this. I don't want to lose you." Tears welled in Rachel's eyes, not out of fear this time, but out of gratitude. For the first time in years, she was home. Truly home. What they had built wasn't perfect, but it was real. It was strong, and it was theirs. And in that moment, Jack, Rachel, and Eliach scarred. Each brave, each willing chose each other. Not because they had to, but because love had found its way back in. Their story, once defined by loss, now had a new chapter meant to inspire others to believe that even after the storm, a second chance at happiness is always possible. The sun rose slow and golden the morning Jack asked Rachel to take a walk with him. The ranch was quiet, save for the soft rustle of breeze through the fence line and the distant sound of Eli laughing with the horses in the barn. Jack led her to the old oak tree on the hill place, where wildflowers had just begun to bloom again, where they had once shared stories and silence during their hardest days. He took off his hat, holding it nervously in his hands. Rachel looked up at him, sensing something in his stillness. Jack, a man of few words, cleared his throat and looked into her eyes clear, steady, and full of everything he had never dared hope for again. "I never thought I'd get a second chance," he said quietly, voice thick with emotion. "But you brought me back. You and Eli gave me something I didn't think I'd feel again, belonging. Love. A reason to wake up every morning and be better than I was the day before." He paused, pulling a small, worn box from his coat pocket. Inside was a simple ring, nothing fancy, but filled with meaning. "I want to spend the rest of my life with you, Rachel. Will you marry me?" Tears welled in Rachel's eyes. She nodded, smiling through them. "Yes," she whispered. "1,000 times yes." Their wedding wasn't grand, but it was perfect. Held in the open field behind the barn, surrounded by neighbors who had become friends and friends who had become family. Folks brought food, music, and laughter, filling the day with warmth. Eli walked proudly beside Rachel, carrying the rings and wearing his best boots. The ceremony was simple, just the three of them promising to love, protect, and stand by each other, no matter what storms came their way. In a world where discrimination had once defined Rachel's story, this day rewrote it completely. She was no longer a victim of the past, but a woman celebrated, chosen, and cherished. Jack, once broken by grief, now stood tall with hope in his heart and a family by his side. Their story wasn't one of fairy tale perfection. It was stronger than that. It was real, built on hard work, trust, patience, and the choice to love each other despite their scars. It became something that would inspire others in their town and beyond. That healing is possible, that love can come quietly and change everything, and that even in the most unlikely places, family can be found and made. As they danced that night under string lights and stars, Jack held Rachel close, Eli's laughter ringing in the background. And in that moment, the past no longer held power over them. They had found their future in each other.